Welcome back. We're on station number 2. Jesus is arrested. And you'll find the story in Mark chapter 14 and also Matthew chapter 26. After the night of agonizing prayer, Jesus comes to the 3 disciples, Peter, John, and James, and says, "Are you still sleeping and resting? It is enough. The hour has come. Behold, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." Mark chapter 14. Immediately, the stillness of the night is suddenly broken. You hear footsteps, dozens of them marching with purpose. The glow of torches dancing against the twisted trunks of olive trees and casting these long flickering shadows. And then they see them, a mob armed with swords and clubs closing in. And at the front of this mob stands no other than Judas Iscariot. Judas is the one who's leading this mob. Judas, the one who was with Jesus, walked with Jesus. He was among the 12, eaten at Jesus' table, listened to his teachings. For 3 years, he's been part of the inner circle, witnessing the blind see, the lame walk, the lepers being healed, and hearing the words of life. And yet here he is, standing among Jesus' enemies, betraying Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, a price for a common slave. And how does he do it? A kiss, a symbol of love and friendship, turned into an act of betrayal. Mark chapter 14:44 says, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Imagine that. The torches lighting up Judas's face as he steps forward. The confusion in disciples' eyes, James, John, and Peter. The traces of sadness and sorrow in Jesus' eyes. But Jesus doesn't flinch. He doesn't pull away. Rather, he steps forward. He meets Judas with words that cut right through like a sword. "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" In that moment, Jesus could have stopped it all. One word from Jesus and the earth would have opened up and swallowed up the mob. One prayer and legions of angels would have come to defend Jesus. But Jesus doesn't call the heavenly army. He doesn't fight back. Instead, he surrenders. He doesn't surrender to Judas or the mob, but he surrenders to the will of the Father. But Peter isn't about to let this happen without a fight. This is Peter. He grabs his sword and he slices and swings. And he slices off the ear of Malchus, the high priest's servant. He's ready to defend Jesus, ready to go down swinging. But Jesus stops him. In Matthew 26:52, Jesus says, "Put your sword back in its place. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword." Then, in an act that must have stunned everyone, Jesus reaches out and heals the wounded man's ear. Even in the face of betrayal, even as his enemies seize him, Jesus chooses grace and mercy. And then he says something that must have dumbfounded disciples to the core. Jesus says, "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal 12 legions of angels?" Matthew 26:53. 12 legions. That's more than 72,000 angels. In 2 Kings 19:35, one angel of the Lord will strike down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in a single night. You think 72 angels can handle the Roman Empire? That little mob? Of course. Yet Jesus doesn't call them. Because Jesus knew his battle isn't about swords and power and scepters and horses. It's about yielding. It's about surrendering. It's about obedience. The disciples don't understand. One moment, Jesus is healing this man's ear, and next moment, he's letting himself be bound and led away. Disciples are gripped by fear. They run into the night and they scatter, abandoning the one they swore they would never abandon. So Jesus stands there alone. He stands there alone for us to contrast. Contrast between Judas and Jesus. Two men, two choices. Judas, once a devoted disciple, sells his friendship for silver. Maybe he thought Jesus wasn't moving fast enough. Judas, the zealot, of course, he wanted different kind of kingdom, a kingdom that has power and scepter and step on Roman Empire. Not the suffering one, not the surrendering one. Maybe Judas thought that he could force Jesus' hand. But whatever his reasons, his betrayal served as a warning. I think it's easy for us to judge Judas, shaking our head and think about his greed and disillusionment. But if we're honest, aren't there moments when we betray Jesus in our own ways? When we choose comfort over conviction? When we let fear, pride, or selfishness pull us away, even at times embarrassed of Jesus? Then there stands Jesus, fully aware of what's coming. He doesn't resist. He doesn't fight back. He could have, but he trusts his Father's plan, even when it leads him straight to the cross, the suffering. Jesus surrenders, not out of weakness, but out of obedience. And that surrendering will change the course of history forever. What about us? This moment in the garden forces us to ask hard questions. When things don't go our way, do we trust God? Or do we try to take matters in our own hands and try to control it like Judas? As we are reflecting on station number 2, we could ask, when faced with injustice or hardship, do we react with anger and resistance like Peter? Or do we follow Jesus' example and surrender and trust and obey? Are there areas in our lives where we are holding on to our own will instead of saying, not my will, but your will be done? Jesus' arrest isn't a story that took place 2,000 years ago only. It's a call to faithfulness in the present now that we live in. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, God is still at work. Judas chose betrayal. Peter chose violence. Disciples chose fear and they scattered. Jesus chose grace and Jesus chose love. And because he did, the story doesn't end in the garden. The garden I got to visit with some of you. It doesn't end in that garden. It doesn't end with chain and torches and whispers of betrayal. It ends in victory. So as we walk through our own struggles, as we face our own moments of fear and betrayal and uncertainty, our own Gethsemane, may we remember this. Jesus understands. He's been there. He felt the pain of rejection. He felt the weight of suffering. He's walked the path of surrender. And this morning, he is inviting each one of us to be with him, to walk with him, not in fear, not in resistance, but in obedience and trust. Because in the end, to surrender to Father's will is not defeat. Surrendering to Father's will is to take us to the resurrection Sunday. And maybe on this day, whether you do it in the morning or evening, you can sit and write in your abiding journal as you walk with Jesus, as Jesus is with you, dwells in you. You call him to be with you and walk with you. And as we reflect on station number 2, as Jesus is being arrested, may you realize that the God who allowed his son to die on the cross, the God who allowed his son to get arrested for our good, is calling us to be with him, to walk with him for our good. God bless you, and I'll see you on Friday. If you have not left a comment, do that. Tell us how you are being blessed. Also, press the like button or smash that like button so other people can join us. And I pray that you have an amazing day, and may the Lord be blessed through you. I'll see you on Friday.